Welcome everybody. In this talk, we're going to be talking about how to enhance your custom Agentforce applications with the Models API. My name is Charles Watkins, and I'm a lead developer advocate here at Salesforce. Now, I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to give a special thanks to everyone who's watching later on Salesforce Plus. And I also want to remind you that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so don't make any investing decisions based on forward-looking statements. I won't be making any of those, but don't do it. So let's hop right into the meat of the talk. When you launch your first Agentforce application, it's going to be having great conversations with your customers at scale. But there's a challenge, and it's this. You're going to have them answering dozens, hundreds, thousands of questions per day. How do you get a pulse on how those conversations are going? How do you understand what your customers are asking? These are critical questions because they inform not only how you optimize your agent, but how you optimize your overall operations. Wouldn't it be great to know that the majority of questions you get are billing? Wouldn't it be great to know that your agent struggles when it comes to technical troubleshooting? Luckily, there is a solution and a well-established pattern for handling these problems. You just need to do two things. You need to gather feedback from your users, either at the conversation level or the individual message that the agent is sending. And you also need to find some way to create automated summaries and categories of those chats. This allows you to enrich the conversations that the agents are having so they're more analyzable, more reportable things that you can use to inform how your agents evolve and improve. Now, this isn't just my idea. This is a standard industry practice. And you can implement this in Agentforce. Here's Gemini AI. It's from Google. But I could have pulled up OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude. As we can see here, they generate automated summaries. This provides context for users so they can go back to old conversations. It also makes those conversations searchable. They also implement binary feedback on every single message that their agent sends. And this allows them to continually improve their agents because they're continually getting feedback. So what we're going to be talking about is how to do this in a custom Agentforce application. Now to do it, we're going to be using the Models API. The Models API is a tool set offered by Salesforce for building and enhancing AI applications. It has 4 APIs, but we're going to talk about 2. The first one is the Feedback API. It's a really simple but powerful API that allows you to create and store feedback inside of Data Cloud with a single API call. It's ideal for measuring the performance of agents or really any type of AI application. The second is the Generations API. This is an API that allows you to send a single prompt to a large language model and get a response. Now this is a very, very powerful tool because you can use it to say, send a message to an AI chatbot and say, hey, based on this initial message, can you categorize it between billing, tech support, or whatever else? Can you summarize this question? And in doing so, you can enrich your chat information. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. But we're going to start off by talking about feedback, because if you have to pick only one of these 2 things, you should be collecting feedback on your agents. Now, the approach to adding feedback is pretty straightforward. Here's the story. Your customer is going to be interacting with your agents, and at either a message level or at the end of a conversation, they're going to want to submit feedback. What your agent application needs to do is gather that feedback, package it up, and then send it to Salesforce via the Models API. Once that happens, that feedback will automatically filter into Data Cloud in hourly batches. This is really great because, as you'll see, Data Cloud offers a variety of tools for reporting and analysis. It is a great place to understand and analyze your feedback. Now, the Feedback API itself is really straightforward. I'm only going to show you code twice. This API is available for REST as well as Apex. In either case, the way the API works is really straightforward. You are going to call the Feedback API, either as a REST endpoint or via an Apex class, and you're going to send along some information in the request body. Now there's 4 fields you need to send. One is a unique identifier that you generate for the piece of feedback. The second is the generation ID, and this is either the ID of the conversation, if you're collecting feedback for the conversation, or the message, if you're collecting feedback for the message. The feedback can be either good or bad, and the source is always going to be human. There are additional fields that you can send, like feedback text, if you want to collect written text from your users, but these are the 4 fields you need to send. Now, here's a quick look at that's pretty zoomed in. Here's a quick look at one of the reports that is automatically generated from Data Cloud. So once you're collecting feedback, you'll automatically have this report, and as you can see, it comes with a visualization that shows the good and bad feedback at a high level, as well as a table that you can use to create custom aggregations and filters. This is a really powerful tool for getting a high-level view of how your overall application is performing, and this requires no work. You just get this for free. Another really great tool is Data Cloud's Query Editor. I love this tool because it allows you to create custom analytics and custom reports using standard SQL. You can use this to not only understand the feedback that's coming from the Feedback API, but you can also potentially join it with other data sources. It's very powerful. So once you set up the Feedback API, you'll have all of these events and feedback flowing into Data Cloud. And that'll give you a high-level understanding of how your overall agent is doing, right? But what you might find is that you have a proportion of negative feedback, but you don't have context. You're just getting good versus bad. So the next thing you'll want to do is enrich the chats that are being generated with some form of categories and summaries so that you have a high-level overview. For that, we're going to use the Generations API. Now, has anyone used prompt templates before? Okay, so the Generations API is very similar to a prompt template. Essentially what you do is you write a prompt in your code, you attach some instructions as well as necessary context. So if you wanted to summarize and categorize a conversation, the initial message from the customer would be that context. And then what you do is, using the API, send that prompt to a large language model of your choice. Now, what makes this API great is that it supports over a dozen pre-configured models from OpenAI, Azure, Anthropic, and I'm pretty sure Gemini in the future. You automatically get localization and language support in 18+ regions, and you also benefit from Salesforce's proprietary Einstein Trust Layer, which gets you 0 retention agreements so that your prompts aren't used for training, and PII redaction so that you're never sending personally identifiable information. And if you want to bring your own model, you have DeepSeek hosted somewhere, you can do that via Data Cloud and call it through this API. Super powerful. Now, the architecture for this setup is a little bit more complex, but it's still pretty straightforward. It's still one API call. But let's walk through how it works. Your customer is going to submit a question. This is how it works for like OpenAI and Gemini and all these other chatbots. You'll notice you submit a question, and then that question is sent to both the agent as well as the large language model. And in the prompt that's sent to that large language model, you essentially request, hey, categorize and summarize this question, and then return it to me as a JSON string. Your app's going to take that JSON string, parse it, and then show the summary as the chat title, and then enrich whatever database records that you are using to track your conversations with both the summary and the category. Now, the API is also really straightforward. And again, this is available in both REST and Apex. So what you'll do is you'll call the generations API, specifying a particular model, and the model names are in the docs. You'll also, in the request body, essentially attach your prompt. And this is written instructions. So you'll say, for example, please categorize and summarize this chat message. You'll inject the customer's message, and then you'll get a response back, and you'll use it in your code and render it in your application. Now, I've been doing a lot of talking and showing a lot of slides. I want to spend the majority of the time on the actual demo. So for this talk, I actually built a custom Agentforce application. It uses React and Express. Are there any web developers in the crowd? Okay, so here's the good news. If you didn't know it, you can, right now, deploy a Agentforce agent with a custom UI powered by your favorite open source technologies. And you're going to see that right now. All right. So here is an app that, again, it's running on React. We're going to do a quick refresh here. And it uses an AI called, make this a little bit smaller. It uses an AI concierge. This is an AI agent. And this AI agent works for a fictional hospitality company called Coral Cloud Resorts. Now, what I want to call out first are two things. One, every single message has two buttons, a thumbs up and a thumbs down button. And this is how customers are able to send feedback on individual messages so that you understand the quality of your agent's generations and responses. When I click this button, it automatically makes a request to the feedback API, and it flows into Data Cloud. The other thing I want to show is that we have a title for our chat message. Now, this title starts off as untitled, but if I submit a query, you're going to see that this message actually gets updated. So let's ask our agent a question. So it works at a hotel, so I'm going to ask about a, let's see, can you tell me about the romantic couples massage package? Now this question goes to the agent, but it also goes to a large language model via the generations API. And as we can see here, we can see that the title has been updated to the romantic couples massage package. Now this is a really, really simple addition to our application, but it does a lot. It makes this conversation searchable. It makes it so that our customer can come back and have immediate context on what this conversation was about and pick up in the future if necessary. But it also gives your operation teams high-level visibility into what people are asking about. So I have this chat here in my application, and this is the customer view. But what powers this is Agentforce and Salesforce. Specifically, for every chat that I make, there is a record inside of Salesforce. So let's hop into the Salesforce view. So I have an object called the messaging sessions object. This is a standard object that's used for all of the different types of messaging via Service Cloud. And when I click refresh, I should see my chat about the romantic couples massage package, and here it is. Now, this is a great view because in a single view on Salesforce, I know what everyone's talking about. I also can see that not only do I have session summaries, but I have a session category. And we can see that not only was the category generated, but it's actually appropriate for the customer's question. Now, this is really powerful for getting an understanding of what's happening in the moment. But how do you get an understanding of what's happened generally? Well, what makes this powerful, again, is because this is a part of Salesforce, we can take the feedback that we're getting on our chats, and then we can join that with the context of the chat itself. So we can see not only do we have like a good message, but the good message came from the chat about the romantic couples massage package, for example. And for that, we're going to hop into Data Cloud. So this is the Data Cloud query editor. And I can't gush enough about this tool. It's so powerful. The more data you have in Data Cloud, the more powerful it becomes. So for context, I have my feedback flowing into Data Cloud so I can query it. But Data Cloud is also a part of Salesforce's core platform. So I can actually bring in records from any object that I have inside of Salesforce, and that's what I've done. So at a high level, what this query does is it gathers feedback from the feedback table, and then it joins it on my messaging session records and pulls out the summary and the category. So now I have context of both the feedback and what the chat was actually about. So let's run this. All right, we got our results. Check this out. So we have our feedback, as well as our session summary and our session categories. Now, this is a really simple query that I wrote. It only has 3 columns, but you can imagine the types of insights that you can find. You might create an aggregation or a more custom report where you find that booking management has a lower overall sentiment, more bad feedback than, say, experience inquiries. And you can not only join it on this data, but if you're building your application on Heroku, for example, you can add some of the application data that you might have in your database, your Postgres database. The possibilities are really, really endless here. So let's do a quick wrap up. First, you are able to build custom Agentforce applications with your favorite technologies. You can do it with Apex and Lightning Web Components. You can do it with React and Express. When you're doing it, however, you'll want to use the Models API to build better, more measurable experiences by gathering feedback. You can do feedback collection for individual messages or entire conversations. And when you're collecting that feedback, it automatically flows into Data Cloud so that you can use the pre-generated reports or write custom queries like you just saw a moment ago. One thing I want to call out, this does use Data Cloud credits, so do be mindful of your configuration and setup. As far as enrichment goes, you can use the Generations API to create summaries and categories and even sentiment of chats. This allows you to enhance your user experience so that those chats are searchable and named, but it also makes it easier to report and analyze on that feedback that you're collecting. Now, one thing I want to say about large language models more generally is that they can take a long time. So you want to make sure that when you're calling the Generations API, you're doing it asynchronously. You don't want to block your app. Another thing you'll want to do is use smaller, faster models like the OpenAI mini models or Anthropic's Claude Haiku models so that your responses from the large language model returns faster. Now, I've collected a few different resources to help you get started for both the Models API and Agentforce development, including information on the new Agent API, which makes this even more relevant. So go ahead and take a picture of the QR code. I'll leave this up here for now. But I want to thank you all for your time and attention. It's been great sharing this all with you. Go out and build some really cool agentic experiences. Thank you.